In order to understand how coral reefs work, we have to start with their skeletons. Yeah, they've got M. Despite being animals, not plants or rocks, most corals have hard, crunchy skeletons made of calcium carbonate, just like seashells and snails. These skeletons can be single, like the ones you might find on a beach, or multiple, forming interconnected structures that serve as homes to countless other critters and form what we know as coral reefs. It all begins with a tiny organism called a polyp. It has a mouth surrounded by stinging cells, a gut, and a single opening for both eating and pooping. That's the gist of it, and these polyps reproduce both sexually and asexually. When conditions are good, they happily clone themselves over and over. But when there isn't enough food to go around, or things get too hot or too cold, polyps will release sperm and eggs into the water in hopes of producing offspring who are better suited to survive the conditions. When you see a coral reef, what you're looking at is actually a bunch of these polyps, their skeletons, and the algae that lives among them. Corals can come in all shapes and sizes, and different types of corals have different forms of skeletons. Some, like gorgonians, have a flexible, rubbery skeleton made of protein fibers, while others have a hard calcium carbonate skeleton with tiny holes that help them capture prey. Regardless of the type, the skeletons provide structure and support, helping the coral maintain its shape. They also provide protection from predators and a surface for the coral to grow on. Corals live in mostly shallow, sunlit waters around the world and play an important role in marine biodiversity. They form the basis of entire ecosystems. According to the Nature Conservancy, 1/3 of all ocean species call coral reefs home, even though they only cover 1% of the ocean floor. Coral reefs are made up of more than just the coral itself. Within their tissues lives a type of algae called zooxanthellae. They photosynthesize and provide the coral with energy in the form of sugars, which the coral uses for growth and building its skeleton. In exchange, the coral provides the algae with a protected environment and nutrients. Together, these two work to build the reef. But this process takes time. It can take decades for a coral reef to form and grow large enough to support other sea life. And during that time, they're super fragile. A storm or change in sea level can wipe out a newly forming reef, killing off its corals before they have a chance to establish themselves. So how do new coral reefs get started? While individual corals can reproduce and clone themselves, creating new coral colonies, it usually starts with a larva. When eggs and sperm meet in the open ocean, they develop into free-swimming coral larvae. After a few weeks, these larvae settle down onto a suitable surface and begin to grow, eventually forming a new coral colony. This process of starting a new colony from a larva is called sexual reproduction. Most corals also have a way of reproducing without finding a mate first, budding. With budding, a new coral grows as an exact genetic clone of its parent, growing from an indentation or bud on the parent coral until it's large enough to break off and become its own individual. Another form of asexual reproduction is fragmentation, where a piece breaks off of the parent coral and grows into its own thing. It's kind of like taking a cutting from a houseplant and growing a new plant. Regardless of how it starts, each new coral begins as a single cell and then rapidly divides and differentiates, eventually becoming a mature coral polyp. After that, they just keep on cloning, creating more and more polyps until they form a colony. Now that we know how they grow, let's talk about why they're dying. Coral bleaching happens when corals expel the algae living in their tissues. This can be caused by a number of factors, but it's most often linked to rising ocean temperatures due to climate change. When water temperatures rise above the optimum range for corals, they become stressed and expel their algal symbionts. Without their algae, corals lose their color and turn white. This doesn't kill the coral right away, but it does make them more vulnerable to disease and starvation. If the stress continues, the coral will die. Ocean acidification is another huge problem. As the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, it becomes more acidic. This makes it harder for corals to build their skeletons and can cause existing coral skeletons to dissolve. Then there's pollution. Runoff from farms and cities can carry fertilizers, sewage, and other pollutants into the ocean where they can smother corals and prevent them from getting the sunlight they need to survive. Overfishing can also damage coral reefs. When fish populations are depleted, it can throw off the balance of the ecosystem and allow algae to outcompete corals for space. Destructive fishing practices, such as bottom trawling, can also damage or destroy coral reefs by catching corals in their nets and dragging them along the ocean floor. Coastal development and tourism can also harm coral reefs. When people visit coral reefs, they can damage corals by stepping on them or by touching them with sunscreen or lotions. We humans do a lot of damage to the oceans, and our impact on coral reefs is one of the most well-documented and studied examples. Our burning of fossil fuels and destruction of forests and other ecosystems is changing the chemistry of our oceans. And the result is a warming, more acidic ocean that's less hospitable to coral reefs. But while scientists work on reducing our impact on the global climate, some organizations are working on solutions closer to home. This is especially important because coral reefs are not only beautiful and ecologically important, they're also economically important. They're major tourist destinations and they protect coastlines from erosion and storms. Reef Renewal, an organization based in St. Lucia, works with local communities to restore dying reefs. Their work includes monitoring reefs to determine what needs to be done, growing coral in nurseries, then transplanting them to areas that need a boost. They also work to educate people about the importance of coral reefs and how to protect them. Reef Renewal works with local fishers to grow and transplant corals. Fishers will suspend long lines from their boats and attach coral fragments to the lines. Then they'll submerge the lines and wait. After a few months, the coral will grow and be ready to transplant. There are a number of ways that corals can be grown in nurseries. One popular method is to use a floating platform with a rope suspended from it. Fragments of coral are tied to the rope, which is submerged so that the corals can grow. When the corals are ready to be transplanted, they're carefully removed from the rope and placed on the reef. Organizations like Reef Renewal typically focus on fast-growing branching corals. These corals grow quickly and can help to stabilize the reef structure. They also tend to have a high survival rate when transplanted. The success of coral reef restoration depends on a lot of factors, including the health of the reef, the skill of the workers, and the support of the local community. It can take years to restore a coral reef, and there's no guarantee that it will be successful. But projects like Reef Renewal are giving dying reefs a fighting chance. Coral reefs are one of the most beautiful and diverse ecosystems on Earth. They provide habitat for countless species of fish and other marine life, as well as protection from storms and erosion. But they are under threat from climate change, pollution, and overfishing. By understanding how coral reefs work, we can better protect them and find ways to restore dying reefs. It may seem hopeless, but it's not. We've already seen what we can accomplish when we set our minds to it. It took only a few decades to get into this mess. So it won't take forever to dig ourselves out of it. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about strange facts, stay tuned for more updates. See you next time.